Well, I can start with a bit of a story. So when the kindergarten teacher asked the class what they wanted to do when they grew up, I was that weird kid that said they wanted to be a forester. And so pretty much from that point on, I have been really interested in this field. Something I say with students quite a bit is I want them to make the world a better place. And one of the things about working within forestry is that on a day-by-day basis, I'm basically making the world a better place. I'm managing ecosystems, getting them to better endpoints. I'm generating product that feed industry in the world. It's actually really a wonderful field to be in. A lot of natural processes. What we essentially do within forestry is manage natural processes. Most times we're actually mimicking natural processes. And so if I was to look at some of our main silvicultural systems, like a shelterwood, it's a condition where we remove some of the overstory so we get light to the ground so little seedlings regenerate. And in that condition, what we essentially are doing is mimicking a windstorm damage, partial damage to a stand. Coppice, where we take the overstory off of an area and let it resprout from the roots, things like aspen trees. Same thing, we're mimicking a natural disturbance. We could allow nature to take its course, but what we end up with is things that don't necessarily match human goals for the sites. We may well have a goal for wildlife habitat. We may well have an aesthetics goal. And so we want to actually manage to favor those conditions. And so what forest management allows us to do is essentially to favor the conditions we want for specific organisms. Whether it's wildlife, whether it might be plants, we favor the conditions we want based on our goals. Well, when I look at kind of the conditions our stands are in now, what's happened in Wisconsin is through time parcels have gotten smaller, and that's actually, it's partly because we have such a wonderful state. People want to come into the northern part of the state, they want to come into the central part of the state, and they want to buy their little piece of heaven. And that's actually wonderful. It means that people are interested in the resource. And so that's the positive side of it. The negative side of it is that these parcels, because of demand for the land, are becoming smaller and smaller. So people might have bought 80-acre pieces in the past. Now they're buying 20-acre and 5-acre pieces. And at some point it becomes prohibitively small for an individual timber sale to be able to happen on a property. If you look, a lot of landowners are very open to silviculture, management of their woods. They may not be as open to timber harvest just for economic return. And so they're interested in generating wildlife habitat or working with aesthetics or doing forest restoration. But once your parcels get small enough, it becomes very prohibitively difficult to do the work. It costs quite a bit of money to get the equipment to the site. In the past, a lot of logging was done by chainsaw or even further back by other equipment. Now, quite a bit of the timber is harvested using large equipment, which is expensive to get to the site. If you're not able to do this across property boundaries where you have multiple neighbors interested in sales, there's just simply not enough timber to justify bringing the equipment to the site. And so when you're able to take several small parcels and put them together and have people managing and cross property lines, you're able to generate conditions that are good for the wildlife in the area. You're able to generate enough volume from the sale to justify getting a logger to the site, and you're able to do more creative things. So I can look at this landing here as an example. This is a location where we actually decked wood so that it could be shipped. When you see it now, my opinion at least, is beautiful. You can see small aspen root sprouts coming in and back. This is normal biology, aspen root sprouts when it's cut. This landing was put in this spot specifically because I had aspen here, so I could actually cut this, get it to come back. Grouse love this, so rough grouse will utilize this habitat. I planted this right here in this landing because this acts as what's called bugging habitat. For juvenile grouse, they need protein, and they get their protein and their fat from insects. This makes food for insects, so the grouse chicks will utilize this landing. So as this aspen grows, this right here is going to provide habitat for them. Now, I personally think it's beautiful. I mean, I love these landings. If you seed them with things like early on, it's going to be these wildflowers. It's going to turn a little bit more to grasses as we go later in time. You can see some of the grasses already in here. This was seeded with Canada wild rye, native grass. And so this site is going to be basically beautiful, good habitat. One of the things that's nice about when you're setting up timber sales with neighbors, you actually have multiple neighbors who have kind of group ownership to the impact of it. These timber sales frequently are being set up if they're on smaller parcels with either restoration goals or wildlife goals. And wildlife usually use much larger scale areas. And so if you only have a 5 or a 10 acre piece of land, these animals are going to be using much broader than that. And so if you have multiple neighbors that are actually joining together, you can actually look at the habitat across those areas and set it up, and it works better for that. And you know, there are some animals that use very small areas. You know, rabbits, they don't have big home ranges. You look at things like deer, they use bigger areas. You look at animals like fishers, they use huge areas. And so essentially you're able to set up different habitat elements. I've worked with landowners in the past where I had, let's say, 3 adjacent landowners. So this is one I'm thinking of particularly. These 3 landowners have known each other literally their whole lives. And so they own this land. It was some cases owned by their great-grandparents or grandparents. And so these pieces of land are right next to each other. They love to deer hunt. So you can manage on this person's property and do a shelter wood. You can do on this person's property and do a shelter wood in this one, but not in the same location. So shelter wood is temporary habitat. In 10 years, the habitat's going to be different. In 20 years, the habitat's going to be different. And in 10 years, you switch the location. So at any one time, you have ideal habitat for multiple species on different properties that they can utilize, but moved into a different location. Because these systems are not static, they're always changing. And so what you're ending up with, this condition right here, this landing, in 10 years, that aspen's going to be pretty big. In 20 years, that aspen's going to be big enough that the grouse aren't going to use it as heavily. And at that time, you're going to want to have another habitat where you have more aspen. So what that means is in 20 years or 10 years, you're going to generate that next chunk that's going to give that early successional habitat that the birds need. You can't, it just doesn't stay in one condition. Things are constantly aging, constantly dying, and if you don't keep that cycle of rebirth going, you're not going to have a healthy system. It just doesn't work. The thing I love about this, the thing that actually worries me, but the flip side is the thing I love about it, is that what worries me is the more of the land that is in smaller parcels, the less economically viable harvest becomes. We're a big state for timber products. We produce the most paper on a state-by-state basis. We're the largest paper producer in the country, and it is a good industry to be in. 2 of my kids are in the paper industry, and I love the idea that we have such a great industry. It actually, besides just the fact it's economically valuable, it allows us to do forest management. It generally utilizes the lower quality, lower end product in the state. So if we just had a sawlog industry or we just had a veneer industry, all you can really utilize is those nicer, higher quality material. The pulp industry absorbs a lot of that smaller, lower quality material, meaning I can go in and cut the lower quality stuff to favor the high quality trees, kind of to nurse it like a garden. That's a wonderful thing, right? As these parcels get smaller, it's much harder to do that. And if you have multiple landowners go together with this, you're able to do blocks of habitat. You're not obliged to manage where your goal is necessarily production of high quality timber. Your goal can actually be production of restoration endpoints, you know, restoring conditions. Your goal could be savannas, your goal could be oak woodlands, your goal could be old growth forest, your goal could be wildlife habitat optimization, you know, whatever your goals are. And where you have multiple landowners, you end up being enough volume, you can justify it, you can use some of the safer equipment. Most of these larger scale equipments are safer in operation than doing the work with chainsaws. And it just allows the industry to benefit, but also the landowners to benefit. The thing that's nice about working with your neighbors is when these forest health issues happen, they are very seldom on a single property. They usually are across broad areas. And you end up with one neighbor that has a problem. You usually don't just have that single neighbor. They're experiencing very similar conditions frequently, and you have multiple landowners with the same problem. It could be oak wilt. You know, oak wilt is very seldom on a single property. It may start there, but it spreads. Heterobasidian root disease very seldom starts on a single property, but usually through time spreads. And you know, I could just keep naming. Emerald ash borer, which is something that's going to be a problem. Beech bark disease, which you know, adjacent state is an issue. You can just keep naming the organisms, and you keep running into problems with them. Those issues, they're very seldom on a single property basis. They're broader scale. One of the nice things about, so the question of diversity, the more diverse your habitat, you generally favor a broader range of organisms. Homogeneous conditions are actually good for some animals as well, so I don't want to give the impression that every animal uses the same habitat. It varies a lot. But if you were to look at this condition that we're seeing right here, we have open conditions, we have much more closed conditions, we have partially open conditions. It is very much more variable. If you have a small property, a very small parcel like 5 acres or something, you can't really create all of those conditions on that property base. It's not possible. So you've got multiple properties adjacent to each other. You can create different elements of habitat on different properties, and through time you can essentially address those conditions. You know, 10 years in the future, yours might be the area with early successional habitat. Right now your neighbor might be. So Central Wisconsin Environmental Station was just an amazing place to do this demonstration. There are a great deal of students that come through here, anywhere from grade school kids, high school kids, students that camp in summer, as well as our students at the university. Then we have adult education that happens there, as well as other activities. So I mean, we have a huge number of people that come to this facility. That means that we have the opportunity to have a big impact on who sees forestry. It's really interesting because forestry is kind of a hidden industry. Even though people see log trucks going down the road and they know about paper mills, in lots of ways it's hidden. Even landowners, and a lot of landowners will maybe have one timber sale in their whole time of owning a parcel, maybe have none, because trees grow relatively slowly. It's a crop that works at a much different time scale than people are used to thinking about. And I think people don't recognize how managed this industry is. It is one of the most sustainable industries that we have. And the United States is amazing on this. We do an incredible job compared to many other countries on our forest management. It's very sustainable. It is very well done. And so that particular impact is huge when we're working with private landowners. The fact that we did this at Central Wisconsin Environmental Station gave me the opportunity to put 3 separate demonstrations in place. This one is the habitat demonstration. So that we're on the side of the property that is set up essentially to show how to generate wildlife habitat using timber sales on private lands. And it's an opportunity to bring landowners out to the site as well as foresters. I've used this for forester continuing ed training on how to incorporate these habitat elements within conventional timber sales. So with this particular site, we're in the center of an aspen coppice pocket. If you look in the background, we've actually got a lakeshore management zone. So that zone, basically we kept the equipment out of that area. We have some large monarch white pines behind there that we're hoping to will continue to grow. The hillside back there, that area actually was thinned so that we could release the white pine and grow them to very advanced old age. Beside you here is a landing that was seeded to wildflowers and grasses. So you're going to see essentially, well, what's really visible right now is the black-eyed Susan as well as the Canada wild rye. There are also other plants in there that are kind of a little less visible, things like the partridge pea as well as others. And so through time, this site's going to grow up. The pocket that we're in right here, we've supplementally planted with some white spruce because we want some white spruce in it for diversity. But in addition to that, we're going to get aspen coppice back. And the aspen are going to come up from the root sprouts. They're getting browsed right now, but if you look at the ground level, you're going to see the brambles. Those brambles, things like blackberries and raspberries, act as a soft mast for wildlife, so they eat them. They also act as a forage, they eat the leaves. And the other thing that happens is they develop a two-level structure. You get the aspen over top and the berry brush underneath, meaning it's very good habitat for things like birds. They essentially get protected from avian predators in that condition. Last thing I would point out is you're going to notice coarse woody debris behind this site. Those are logs and branches, bigger branches, that have been allowed to stay on the sites. In this environmental condition, they are particularly important. The reason they're important is the grouse will use them for drumming logs. That's where they do their courtship displays. But they also are an opportunity for amphibians to use them for regulating moisture and for hiding locations. So the amphibians, things like the frogs and salamanders, can use the area underneath it. Overall, this is ideal for a wide range of animals. On the other side of the property, we have a restoration forestry demonstration unit using timber harvest to get to restoration goals. Those goals are things like favoring native species, favoring long-lived species, incorporating coarse woody debris, so down logs that are used by things like amphibians as well as grouses, drumming logs, etc. Standing dead trees that are used by cavity nesting birds, both encouraging those as well as preserving them. Preserving large trees which produce masts, so things like oaks for acorns. Those trees are being preserved on the site. They're being released from competition so they can get big crown expression, make lots of acorns. Pockets of aspen where we can promote aspen. We have a pine stand over there that was delayed in thinning, basically trying to convert that through time into a more diverse stand beyond just red pine, to have white pine, to have some red pine, to have hardwoods, and also to put pockets of aspen in there where we had the opportunity to do it. Incorporation of these kind of landing plantings where we have bugging habitat for birds as well as pollinator habitat for butterflies. So one thing I was going to point out here is the importance of kind of micro habitat and micro topography. So that's a north facing slope, and it's a north facing slope going into Minister Lake. The thing you'll notice is because it's north facing, it's cooler. You actually will have entire habitat type changes that happen. The stuff that's south facing, it stays warmer, it's a little bit drier. The north facing are cooler and moister, and those are really very nice white pine. Those are actually being managed as a long rotation white pine, or try to grow them to advanced age. I mean, I won't see them at that stage, and we're talking a very long time. These were thinned with the idea of taking out the competitors so the remaining white pine can expand their crown and utilize the space, and it's a perfect environmental condition to try to grow them to a long time period. Trying to grow trees for a very long time on sites that they're not capable of is really a waste of time. On sites like this where they are capable of going to quite advanced ages, it's a wonderful place to try if you would like to do that. And this also has Minister Lake in the background. Minister Lake, we kept a riparian reserve on this one as well. And this log road, or this is not a log road, this is actually a skid trail that we're standing on right here, was seeded also so that we basically can have limited erosion, but then also have an area for bugging habitat for birds. The area in the background is actually growing into a mix of aspen and white pine, and that's going to be utilized by ruffed grouse and other animals as well. And the last one we have is the savanna restoration unit, and that one is essentially savannas are wide space trees with forbs and grasses between them. They favor an entire different cohort of wildlife than these do. So what that generates is model ecosystems that we can use for training with students as well as adult ed, but it also makes an incredibly diverse array of habitats for wildlife. It is really amazing to see, like particularly the savanna restoration. That's probably the one that I've really enjoyed the most, because across this I'm already seeing the impact on wildlife. I'm already seeing the higher diversity of wildlife, the more use by wildlife, and I've been able to incorporate this in the classes. We run a best management practices for water quality and forest health training on this facility. We've run timber marking for wildlife trainings on this facility. We've run restoration forestry trainings on this facility. So we have quite a bit going on here beyond just having the camp here, and we've expanded this to other camps. There's another camp just down the road actually that we did some additional work on, and we've been expanding these demo areas. I have 8 of them like this across the state right now that are essentially opportunities to show landowners what this can look like so that they can go see it. It won't necessarily be scary because they can see what it looks like 1 year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. And it gives an opportunity to show what management for different species could look like. We just did one at our Tree Haven facility. That one is for ruffed grouse. It's an opportunity to see what ruffed grouse focus management would look like. This one has got a grouse and a deer focus. What does a grouse and a deer focus management look like? What does a woodcock focus one? We're trying to set up one actually about 5 miles up the road here. That's going to be a woodcock focus management. And just the ideas, you know, how would a person flex this? What will their property look like? And then you can take landowners or you can take foresters. It's an opportunity for training the foresters. It's an opportunity for exposing the landowners. Many landowners bought land because they're in love with this stuff, but they may not know that much about this. And this is the opportunity to say, we know you love the resource. This is how to do these things to get it even better than it already is. There are so many resources out there available right now for landowners. We have resources within University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point on our website, our Forest Education and Development Initiative. There are resources with the RC&D. There are a lot of resources out there. Department of Natural Resources has them, and the Deer Management Assistance Program has them. Ruffed Grouse Society has them. There's just bunches of these organizations that are supporting it. And it's really an amazing resource. The fact that the internet exists right now allows people really just at their fingertips to find out really specific things on how to manage for the organisms that they like. And we offer trainings for landowners, but we also offer trainings for foresters. And the fact that there are foresters out there who specialize in this kind of work is also pretty exciting, because that means a landowner can partner with a forester who basically knows how to make these things that these landowners want to have.